Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to share some of the stories that you guys have been sending in over the past couple of months. You guys, if you're new to the channel, these are called grabbed episodes, and you may hear me at the beginning of episodes or at the end of episodes occasionally saying, use the hashtag grabbed and tell us your story. So one of the ancient names for the planets were grahas in Indian astrology, which meant grabber. The word had a double meaning. It could mean to be grabbed or seized, but it could also mean to grasp or to understand. And there's a teaching in that for us, that the planets come into our lives and often seize our consciousness. They grab us and we go, oh my God. And if you're into astrology, you know what that's like. In the moment that something's happening and you go, oh, the planets are here. And you can really tell. So this series has been dedicated to sharing the stories that you guys send in by using that hashtag grabbed and then naming the transit and then telling us your story. By sharing these stories, we learn so much about astrology. We learn about planetary combinations and the way they can show up in our lives. And more importantly, we remind ourselves why we do astrology and what we are here to gain or learn from having astrology in our lives. So these stories, sometimes I do them, it's been a little while since I've done them. I think the last one we did was like in May, maybe something like that. So when I share these, I go through the hundreds of stories that we receive, and I try to pick some that are unique and different and memorable, that illustrate different transits in really interesting ways, and that give, I think, some sense of the humanity, that we're all a part of. And these are stories that usually kind of remind me of like why I'm here and why I'm doing this. So anyway, I hope you will enjoy today's stories. And a lot of these are pretty crazy. We had some really intense astrology over the past few months. So some of these, this is like a heavier episode. There's some light moments for sure, but the stories were almost unanimously pretty heavy. Saturn entering Pisces and Pluto entering Aquarius has stirred up a lot for people. We had eclipses at the 29th degree of Aries and a lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and we had a big T-square between Mars, Pluto, and Jupiter. And we had a bunch of Sun-Uranus Mars-Uranus dynamics. So I found that in this is like, I think this is the 18th episode, something like that. And I think this is one of the heavier episodes. So I just give that as a little bit of a warning, but these stories are also very profound. So, all right, let's get into it. So these date back quite a ways. So some of them are older transits and some of them are newer transits, but this one is Venus in a square with Saturn. Today, my boss announced that once the candy in the hidden candy drawer has run out, there will be no more candy in our department, because an unnamed individual has allegedly complained about the candy drawer. Everyone is pissed and gossiping about each other to me about how they think the other person is so and so. I can't help but laugh at how silly this is. But there you have it. You have almost like the withholding of pleasure, or a complaint about candy, which is, just a really interesting manifestation. Mercury square Uranus. Today, my boss, Mercury square, I goofed that up. Okay, here we go. Aries eclipse in the 10th house. I'm a Cancer rising, so this Aries eclipse lands in my 10th house. A month ago, around the new moon, I started a new job at a cafe. The intention was to meet people, get to know the community while making extra income. I'm an astrologer in a new city. My work is rather lonesome, and I don't have much of a social network here yet. I thought of working at a coffee shop that might do me good, even if I was overqualified. Quickly, I realized that this was absolutely not in alignment with my energy. I was overworked, underpaid, and feeling undervalued. I made my grievances known this past Friday, and on Monday, when I came into the shop, I was informed they were firing me as I was not a good fit. No kidding, I wasn't a good fit. I felt so depleted and underappreciated and overworked that I was becoming so unhappy. I knew I wanted to quit as soon as I wasn't paid on time, but I didn't as I appreciated the extra income, and told myself to give it one more month, even though I dreaded the thought. So this solar eclipse offered a massive needed redirection back to my full-time path of astrology. Of course, I'd rather quit than been fired, but I laughed at the timing. So an eclipse in the 10th house. That's like spot on. And I think it's interesting how sometimes we need that little reminder that we can't fill our time with things that aren't essential to who we are and what we should be doing. And at other times, you know, it might be that if you're building an astrology career, you need a part-time job or you need to do something to help build the career. But it's interesting how those eclipses in the 10th house will just clarify the path we're on with respect to our career. Here's a Scorpio eclipse in the first house, place of body, place of mind and self. Scorpio eclipse in the first house. I decided to start taking somatic exercise classes, and the first month deals with getting better hip mobility. 9 times out of 10, whenever I have pain in my body, it typically stems from my hips. I'm hoping to get a release of emotion and tension. So a Scorpio lunar eclipse in the first house coincides with taking somatic exercise classes and noticing that the first portion of this course that comes after the eclipse will focus on the hips where this person has a lot of tension, and they're hoping that this will lead to a release. That's such a great manifestation. A lunar eclipse in Scorpio in the first house, I'm going to take somatic exercise classes. This one is very symbolic and strikes me as a good example of Scorpio eclipse and a lot of the things that we saw around that time and that I saw in my clients' lives and so forth. I believe this set of events carries symbols related to the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. This is happening on the day of the eclipse. I found a baby rabbit dead on my doorstep. My older black cat, Daisy, hasn't hunted in years, not since we lived on the back of a large woods. These days, she sleeps most of the time, but last night, she seems to have decided to capture and kill a gray baby rabbit, leaving it for me to see. After compassionately disposing of the small body, I sat down for some coffee at my kitchen table. Looking out the window in front of my garage about 10 feet away, there sits a large rabbit looking directly at me. I drink my coffee and wait for the uncomfortable feeling of shame and dirty secrets to hop away with the rabbit, but the rabbit doesn't leave. It just sits there and stares at me. Yeah. It's heavy. And one of those events where you can feel that there's something has happened, and what's happened is its own event, and yet it's speaking to something more, something deeper, and something that we're maybe being invited to explore. I felt that a lot with the Scorpio eclipses that we had. Here is Uranus conjoining the Sun in Taurus, or I should say the Sun conjoining Uranus in Taurus. I had a surprising diagnosis today. I've been trying to find out since last September what is wrong with my legs and knee. I was told I had arthritis and would simply need a microsurgery to clean out my knee. Would I change doctors? I did research to find the best surgeon. My new doctor ordered an MRI and found a stress fracture. He has ordered a special brace that I will wear for 8 weeks, and later I'll need a knee replacement. I was in shock. Didn't see this coming, but it's good to finally get an accurate diagnosis. See, that's so amazing, is that the Sun, when it hits Uranus, one of the things we talked about on my channel was the way in which clarity, illumination, and understanding can come very rapidly, suddenly, unexpectedly. And here's a person who is basically getting an accurate diagnosis. So yeah, that's really profound. Get myself in focus here. All right, move my reading over here a little bit. Jupiter entering Taurus. The last time Jupiter was in Taurus, I was getting married for the first time. This time, as Jupiter comes back into Taurus, I am getting married again. Different husband. Taurus is in my 5th house. So, sorry, I thought there was more. That's it. So, yeah, so this person got married when Jupiter was in Taurus previously. I guess it was 2 times ago that Jupiter was in Taurus that they got married. And then 2 Jupiter into Taurus cycles later, they are getting married again, new husband. So I think that's super fascinating that there's a recurrence. In the 5th house is a place, it was called the joy of Venus, and among other things is associated with romance and love. Fascinating. It's a nice one. Jupiter into Taurus, let's see. Oh, so this Jupiter in Taurus, as it moves into Taurus, is conjoining this person's Saturn in their 4th house of home and family. And I have charged a family member with sexual abuse, much to some of their family members' objection. And the outcome of this will be occurring any day now, which is fascinating because Jupiter, a planet that's associated with justice and the legal system, the justice of Zeus, so to speak, conjoining Saturn in the fourth house of family is coinciding with a moment of justice for the family. We'll see what the outcome is for this person, I guess, but that makes a lot of sense that Jupiter would move into your fourth house and hit Saturn as it enters Taurus, and that there would be the almost like excavating of an old family karma and justice surrounding that. Well, good luck to you. That sounds like maybe there's something that could be very relieving about coming to the conclusion, whatever the outcome may be. At least there's a sense of having addressed it as fully as you could. Anyway, here's one, the Sun conjoining Uranus. I like this one a lot. Or excuse me, Jupiter into Taurus. I keep reading the wrong heading. So Jupiter moves into Taurus. As I was signing my new lease yesterday, a notification from an astrology app that I use popped up and says Jupiter has moved into the fourth house, which is where the whole sign house of Taurus is located in this person's chart. So Jupiter moves into their fourth house of home and property, and this person signed a new lease. Isn't that interesting? One enters the fourth house and hits Saturn, and you have this kind of karmic justice of an old abuse or trauma. And then you have another person with Jupiter moving into the fourth house signing a new lease. It's just so amazing how you can see the topics manifesting in so many different ways. Now, here's where we get into some of the heavier stuff. Mars opposite Pluto. You might remember this as Mars moved into Leo and opposed Pluto in Aquarius. Yesterday at work, I had a strange guy come into my job and started talking to me, saying all sorts of crazy things. He said he just got out of prison because he had slit someone's throat and a few other things. I tried to brush it off. Later, the same guy was in the lobby again and asked me to come to him because he needed to ask me something. I walk over and he propositioned me, saying he would pay me to spend the night with him. I work at a hotel. I immediately said no and reported it to my general manager. The GM went out to the lobby and was asking this man to leave the property. The man did not want to go and was trying to negotiate his way into staying. Another guest was in the lobby and heard the whole thing and started yelling at the man to leave as well. So the guy leaves, or at least we thought he did. About an hour or two later, I was standing outside the lobby and was having a conversation with another employee. After I walked back into the lobby and I realized my cell phone was missing. At first, I was thinking maybe I forgot taking it and setting it down, but in my mind, I knew I left it behind on the lobby desk on charge. Anywho, the other employees started calling my phone so we could try to find it, and that same man answered my phone from his room. He never left. He hid in his room and then snuck down to the lobby and stole my phone from behind the counter while I was right outside the lobby door. We told the man that he had stolen property and that it was mine. He wanted me to come up there to his room and get the phone from him. My general manager went to the room and said the guy was squatting down beside his door and was holding onto my phone, supposedly waiting for me. Needless to say, we called the police, and they came out. They said they had been looking for the guy all morning. They stayed on property looking for the man for a while. Eventually, he was arrested, but they didn't even take a statement from me, so I'm not 100% sure what he was actually arrested for. Turns out this guy had been in the room for 2 days and no one even knew. He had been checked out of the system on the 16th, but continued to stay in the room. I'm not even sure how that was possible since they walk the rooms and do inspections once people check out. Whew, that's spicy. Jeez. That is like about as Mars-Pluto as it gets right there. I'm glad you're okay. But yeah, that's the real kind of dark, scary Mars-Pluto vibe. Mars-Jupiter-Pluto T-square. I babysit occasionally for and this was also, remember, Jupiter in the mix of Mars-Pluto. I babysit occasionally for my fourth grade teacher and his wife. This person's older now, so this is their former fourth grade teacher. My parents became friends with him when I was in his class, and they maintained contact with him as I was growing up. We went to his wedding when I was 13. He'd come over for dinner with his wife. He was in a fantasy football league with my dad. Life got busy. We lost contact with them at some point, but reconnected 2 years ago when my dad was in the hospital because his wife happens to work there. I'm now in my early 20s and they're in their early 40s. His wife was a huge support for us during that time, and after my dad passed away, they came to a celebration of life, and I met their 2 kids. After that, I started babysitting for them when they go out on date nights. Everything was always totally appropriate and fine, 0 red flags. Well, his wife was out of town this weekend, and I babysat so he could go out with his friends. The whole vibe of his text was a little more playful than usual, but he has an expressive personality, and I didn't think much of it at first. When he came back home, he said some things that threw me off, like suggesting the 2 of us should go out to dinner, which I responded that me and my mom would love to get to dinner with him and his wife. At first, I tried convincing myself I was crazy or misinterpreting things, but the next day he asked if I wanted to come over after the kids went to bed to watch a movie. His intentions were very clear. He's a fun, charismatic, solar personality. He was my absolute favorite teacher in person as a kid. I feel so disappointed, like I just found out Santa isn't real. This was an extremely bold and cocksure move on his part, considering I've never shown any indication I'm interested or attracted to him whatsoever. He's very loved and respected as a teacher and youth sports coach, and I can't believe he was totally willing to risk me telling his wife or ruining his reputation. For now, I'm just ignoring the message and letting him sweat about it. Wow. First of all, I'm so sorry that's such a disappointing experience, I'm sure. And yeah, I mean, the piece that strikes me there is Jupiter and Pluto. Like Jupiter representing a teacher, and Pluto that, exposing something of the dark or shadow side. And hopefully, that this will be a wake-up call for him. Hopefully you're not responding will serve as a wake-up call, and hopefully this kind of behavior ends, and he and his wife can figure out what's going on, because it's probably symptomatic of something at a deeper level that needs to be addressed, I would imagine. But yeah. Anyway, that's a very Jupiter. It strikes me as very Jupiter Pluto, but Mars in the mix of it's kind of bold and like shocking. Yeah. Here's another Mars Pluto Jupiter incident at a school. My mother has been a teacher at the same school for almost 25 years. For the first time in her career, during the peak of the Mars Jupiter Pluto transit, she got hit by a student. The student ended up saying that she hit him, and the mother is now demanding a full investigation, which is her right. Fortunately, there was a witness. My mother would never strike another person, especially a child. I found it interesting this accusation happened during the peak of this Mars-Pluto-Jupiter transit. Violence also took place between students at another local school during this transit. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how Jupiter brings in that piece about teachers and education and like corruption or violence or something like that. Here's a Mars-Pluto situation again that's equally sort of disturbing. I'm visiting Chicago to celebrate mine and my Taurus sister's birthday. As we were walking to dinner, we notice a helicopter circling above. Seeing it and hearing it and feeling concerned, my sister notes the recent tough times in her neighborhood as crime's been on the rise. 1 block later, we pass a mama pushing a stroller with maybe 7 kids in tow, their energy clearly rattled and frantic. We asked what was happening and if everyone is okay. She reports that 2 blocks up, there had been a car chase and 2 police cars rammed the suspect's car from either end. The driver fled wielding a gun and shooting began. She immediately told the kids to run. Breathless and shaking, she said it was surreal, like a movie. As we processed the situation and calmed down, we noticed one of the little girls was wearing a birthday tiara. We wished her a happy birthday and mentioned we also had 2 birthday Taurians in our crew. Mama was a Virgo, and it felt like we were able to anchor and ground our earth energy together after a very intense and traumatic situation. We basked in the beautiful greenery during golden hour and wished each other well while parting ways. It was a shared moment of community and connection that made us stronger through the medium of astrology. How's that? Beautiful. That's how that is. I'm so touched that you guys could help someone ground and be a stabilizing presence, good Tauruses that you are, and that the kids also could have a little magical connection with their birthday. That's a beautiful story and also a traumatic one. And I'm glad that astrology could play a positive role. Here's Venus opposite Pluto. This is my favorite of the group today. I don't know why. I just like this one so much. For this whole school year, my 16-year-old son has been arch enemies with his ex-girlfriend's best friend. They were saying such mean things to each other that the school had to order them to leave each other alone. Last week, they got into another huge argument that turned into a 3-hour discussion, and now they're suddenly boyfriend and girlfriend. Spending all of their time together. Teenagers. That's Venus. It was Venus square Pluto. That is fantastic. I love that. I love that story so much. Such a Venus Pluto story. This darkness turned attraction. Yeah. Sun square Neptune. This one is intense. Today at work, a coworker brought to my attention that there was a shooting nearby last night, which the police are looking into. He mentioned as a warning that it may or may not have involved our finance manager. Michael, I immediately rejected that idea, said it definitely cannot be him, and changed the topic. A couple hours later, my coworkers and I were called to a meeting that seemed really urgent. Everyone was gathered. Our managers proceeded to tell us about a double homicide shooting in our town last night that had killed Mike and his wife. I won't go through all the gory details because they're pretty graphic, but they were murdered in their car. I ran out of the meeting as someone else was leaving, and the next thing I knew, I was on the bathroom floor having a panic attack and flashbacks of what I had seen when I was 6 years old in the car with my 3-year-old sister as our father was shot and killed. Wow. It was as though I was living in 2 timelines at once. I was my 6-year-old self in the car experiencing the tragedy of watching my father get killed, and I was my 25-year-old self experiencing the tragedy of these children who watched their parents get killed. The 2 kids were in the back of the car when their parents were killed. The pain I was feeling was immeasurable. After 19 years, the pain is still there. It seems that I had only gotten better at repressing it. After all, can someone truly heal from a real-life nightmare? Once you lose a piece of you like that, can you ever be truly whole? I pray for all the children who have grieved the loss of their parents, and I pray for the hurt child in you and me. Stay strong is an understatement. It gets better is an overstatement. R.I.P. Mike, a kind man who made it his mission to spread joy and positivity every day at the workplace. R.I.P. Brittany, his wife. Love for the children, and R.I.P. Dad. Yeah, that's a hard one. I hope you're doing okay. Here's the Mars-Uranus square. Kind of heavy, but my cousin took his own life. My family was surprised. We had no idea he was struggling. The only thing that he felt right when I found out was to mourn his loss with a bottle of wine alone. I wanted to light a candle, and as I was striking the match, it exploded, and a tiny flame shard burned my hand in 2 places, twin marks that touch each other when I closed my thumb and index finger. It hurt like hell, but I proceeded to light the candle and drink the wine, finishing the whole bottle. The next day, I drove to visit my other cousin, the sister of my cousin who passed away. She told me what had happened. He had substance use disorder and had gotten so bad since the pandemic that it completely wrecked his health and life, that he walked with a cane even though he was very young, that he had pancreatitis, secondary diabetes, peripheral neuropathy, that his wife was going to leave him and he had lost his job. I thought about that match striking that had exploded before I drank all that wine, like a warning. My cousin and I have some striking similarities in our birth charts. I've been experimenting with getting sober over the past year, but wavering. For a while, I've had this gut feeling that it's something I need to do, though I wasn't really sure why. Now I have these 2 burn scars on my hand. A reminder from my cousin to think of him and honor his memory and his warning. And this person's in one of our Nightlight programs, and he's decided to try sobriety now as a result of this. And that was a Mars-Uranus transit. It's just striking. Mars-Uranus. I was grabbed a bit this morning when I received a text from my neighbor with whom I have a bit of up and down relationship. Out of the blue, she requested if we could both be tidier with things we leave outside our flat doors. Bear in mind, she has a lot of toys and pots and packages scattered around her side of the communal balcony. Previously, I would be writing apologetic texts with a detailed explanation, even when she was on the wrongdoing side. However, this morning, with no hesitation, very little thinking, I decided I couldn't give a dime about her hypocritical requests. I realized I've always helped her in the past, even lent her money, and felt taken for granted. So I stood my ground, texted a very short message, not apologizing, and said what I thought assertively. I felt irritated and at the same time empowered. I just didn't care about the consequence and found the words straight away. This was a shift. Normally, I'd be fearful and more careful. Well, that Mars-Uranus can help you have a little breakthrough and where you need to be maybe a little bit more assertive. It's amazing how strong you can feel when you just take that risk that Mars-Uranus might be asking for. Here's another Mars-Uranus story. I've been pregnant since October and I was due on June 30th. So this one's hard. When I heard and reflected on the transits of Mars square Uranus, I immediately connect its energy to what would become my birth story. So during the Mars-Uranus square, they went into labor. Everything in my birthing process seemed perfect and what my midwife would call poetic. I wanted a natural birth in a tub on my land, all of which came to fruition. But as the time came for the child to be delivered into the world and take his first breath, the little baby boy we would later call Giovanni never did. His heart stopped beating and he died before I pushed him out. The surprise, the shock, and the grief that has been taking place since this event has been life-changing, spiritual, and transformational. We're going to let this person have the last word today. Through hardship, I truly see how one can grow. The planets always lead us. And I respect how you could see a transit coming and assume what it'll be about, but you never really know. Although it's an event I would never wish upon anyone, I see now that there are no bad events, but rather situations that bring us lessons. This lesson will always be remembered in my story. Thank you. We really appreciate you. And for all of you who shared, thank you for sharing your hearts and souls. I love hearing your stories. I love laughing with them, crying with them. This is, I think, why we all come together to find astrology in our lives. Although I wouldn't ever wish it upon anyone, she says, I see how there are no bad events, situations that bring us lessons. Well, I hope you guys have a great weekend and that these stories would bring you right into the heart and soul of astrology and why we're here doing it together. All right. Take care, everyone. We'll see you again next week.